Welcome to my world of sewing. My name is Cheryl of Cheryl J Designs, and I teach sewing to children, to adults. I custom design women's clothing, and I also host children's sewing parties or sewing parties for ladies' night out or special occasions. But today I'm here to show you a wonderful sewing project that I know you will enjoy. The project is Cozy Lazy Pants. And it's a wonderful project. It is the first project that I introduce to my students after they've completed the Introduction to Sewing class. This type of project reinforces your sewing skills. It also will help you get used to your sewing machine, use different parts of your sewing machine, as well as it's a great introduction to using a pattern, which I'll show you today. So let's start with things that you need in your sewing supplies. Now, as a new seamstress, just starting out, you really only need basic supplies, such as a good pair of scissors. And once you start using your scissors for sewing, you don't want to use them around the house, just for sewing. Then you also need a tape measure. We would like to have some pins, and preferably pins with a ball head and pin cushion of some sort. And then we need a seam ripper, would be nice to have in our kit, and some type of chalk. Tailor's chalk would be good for marking on the fabric, and also you can purchase a ink pen that has disappearing ink. Now, there are a lot of supplies in the stores, the sewing stores, but you want to start with basic supplies, and you want to add on to your supplies as you grow your skills. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the sewing machine before we move forward. I just want to remind you that it's very important that you understand how to thread your sewing machine, that you're very comfortable with that. And then also, you want to make sure you know how to make bobbins for your sewing machine. And a very good idea is to make several colors of bobbins, put them aside so that when you start sewing, you don't have to interrupt your project to start doing the different mechanics. All right, I think we're ready to start sewing. So, the project that we're going to make today, like I said, is lazy pants. And this is a pair that I made for a toddler. And if you notice, the bottom has a little different color, but when you have scraps laying around the house from other projects, you will be creative and add something onto yours as well. So this is what we're going to make today. But to start, we need a pattern. And the patterns that I recommend for this project is Simplicity 2290 or Simplicity 3669. These are two great patterns, and you can find them either online or you can find them in the fabric store. Okay? Now, you'll say, well, what size do I buy? First of all, you don't want to buy the size pattern for the clothing that you buy in the store. What you want to do is take your measurements as best you can, and then when you go to the fabric store to purchase your pattern, you look on the back of the envelope and you will match up your measurements to the sizes on the envelope. Now, you don't have to worry if you don't find your size on the back, because most packages have at least 5 sizes, and you can fit your size into that and also do some altering to your pattern if it's needed. That's one of the classes that I also teach. Okay, so let's take out the inside of our pattern. And let's see, we have a guide sheet. This is always very helpful to you, gives you some instructions about how to put your garment together. I won't be using this today. I have condensed our instructions down to a fewer steps, and we can make this much quicker. So we won't be using the guide sheet, but you might want to take notes. And the reason why I really like this pattern is because it's one piece that you will make a pair of pants from. And this is the pattern. Now, I have taken this pattern and I've cut it out from the other pieces that were in this package. And when you cut it out, your patterns, you want to be careful not to cut the black lines. We need those. You're going to see how easy and fun this is. Now, one more thing about patterns. This is wrinkled. I've used it over and over. And I particularly wanted to show you this one. We can use patterns over and over. You can smooth them out to reuse them, but if they're too wrinkled for you, you can use a warm iron and press them. And then when you're finished with your patterns, you fold it up, all of the contents, and it's a good idea to get a baggie of some sort and just put all your pieces in, and you don't have to fold them up so small. All right? I think we're ready to start. Of course, we need a little bit of fabric. And also on our pattern, it tells you how much fabric you would purchase for your size. In this case, we're going to use about 1.5 yards of fabric, 60 inches wide. Let's put this aside for one moment. This pattern is so versatile. This is made out of fleece, which is a wonderful soft fabric. I'm going to use flannel today, which is also soft. And then this can also be made out of a nice soft jersey, and this is an adult size. So you see how versatile it is. So we will take our fabric, and you know that there's a side of the fabric that you like to wear on the outside, and then there is the inside of the fabric. What I'm going to ask you to do is to fold your fabric so that you have the inside, the correct side on the inside. So you fold your fabric. Let's just push that out of the way a little bit. And you want to get your open edges to match. Fold it, smooth it out best you can. Okay there. And then what you want to do is you need to grab your pins and your pin cushion. And now we will take our pattern that we've already cut out. Now remember I talked about those measurements. You really want to take measurements for what pertains to what you're creating. In this case, we're going to take our waist measurement and from our waist to the floor so that we know the length. So I've already done that, and I know that this pattern is going to fit the person I'm making this for, these pants for. But in your case, you may want to add 1.5 inches at the top because we have to do a fold down for the waist. And you might want to add 1.5 inches on the hem so that we may hem the pants. And then, of course, later on as we go along, if you don't need it, you can cut it off. But we don't want to be short on fabric. So we have our pattern, and we want to smooth it out and lay it on the fabric. Now, a very important step that I like to ask you to remember is that there is a couple of different markings on your pattern. The one that's important for this pattern is the arrow, which is called the straight of the grain. So the next step we want to do is we want to make sure our pattern is on the fabric straight. It may look visually straight, but if you have a print on your fabric, you want to make sure that it's not put on so that you have a flower laying to the side or something. So in order to do that, we take our tape measure and we look at the arrow that's on the pattern, and we put our tape measure right in the middle of that arrow, and we move it over to the side of the folded side, and whatever number we get there, we also need to get that same number at the bottom arrow. So in this case, I have 14, and I want that number, so I'm going to put a pin right there. Then I move down to the bottom arrow, and if I don't have 14, then I need to shift my pattern just a little bit until I get the same number. I have that, and I will use my pin to hold it. That's it. It's just that easy. Now we need to continue to pin the pattern onto the fabric so that we can cut it. And you want to use as many pins as is comfortable for you. My suggestion is that you use maybe the half of your hand's width for distance between your pins. Now, I like to show you something about pinning. We want to stick the pin in with the pin head on the inside, the point sticking out, so that we can smooth and pin. Smooth and pin as you go around. Smooth and pin. This helps you not to bubble up your pattern by pushing inside. We want to smooth out and pin. So now that we have this pinned, it's now time for us to cut next to the black line. Okay, remembering that you've made a mark if you needed 1.5 inches of a hem and 1.5 inches at the top. So we take our scissors And we will cut all the way around, cutting out that entire piece. I have one done already, completed already, that I like to show you. When we cut it out, it'll look like this. All right, we've cut that out. Doesn't quite look like a pair of pants just yet, but stay with me. Okay, now that we have cut it out, you will have your pattern piece still on the top, and that's good because there's a few other markings that you'd want to pay attention to. Now, we always need to know the front and the back of our pants. So that's a marking that we'd want to make. You take your tailor's chalk, and I chose to put a mark on the back so that I know it's the back of the pants. And you look at it from your pattern and you make your mark. That's the only markings that we need to make on this project. Very good. Now, you can remove your pattern, take your pins out. I've done that on mine. And now we're going to prepare this so that we can sew it. What we are going to do, there's just a couple steps to complete our pants. We're going to sew, this is the seat. We're going to sew both of these half circles, and that will be the seat of our pants. We're going to sew an inside leg seam, a waist, and a hem, and then we're done. So what I'd like you to do is to lay your fabric on the table, take your pins. Again, we're pinning a little bit different this time. I'd like you to pin so that the pin head is sticking just off the edge of the fabric. And be careful that you have two pieces together. Push in, push up. The pin head is sticking right off the edge of the fabric. And you just want to pin in this area where we want to sew. I've done one side. Let's do the other side. Make sure we have two pieces together. And remember, we cut the fabric. This is the wrong side, and we marked on it. This is the correct side that we want on the outside. We're going to pin, push it in. Your pin head is there. Use as many pins as is comfortable for you. Okay, now we have that done. Let's go to our sewing machine. You want to start at the top, and a good reminder is you put the lever down, and another point is to put the needle down. When you start with the needle in the down position, you will stop the thread from flying out of the needle, because if you do, the thread comes out, then you have to sit and start to rethread your sewing machine. If you have a pin cushion near you, you can put your pins there, or just leave them there and collect them later. We're going to be using a lot of pins today. So we're going to start to sew, and I'm using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Another tip for you is you could use the side of your sewing foot as your width, keeping that close to the edge of the fabric if you like. All right, let's start. You want to stop as you go along, check your fabric, make sure it's nice and flat, and you also want to make sure you're not sewing over those pins. We've put those pins in with the pin head sticking out so that they're easy to be pulled out as you sew. At the end of your seam, you know how to do your back stitch. You want to do a little back stitch right at the end. That will tack your thread. Cutting your threads as you go along. You can use the ripper on the side, or you can use your scissors and just trim your threads as you're sewing so that they are out of your way. Now that you've sewn both sides, here's the fun part. All you do is take your pants with two hands and pull it this way. And now you see you're just about have a pair of pants. We have a little more pinning to do. So we lay our pants back down. Now I want to tell you a little tip about your seams on your clothing. Another nice supply item to have is a pair of pinking shears. This is a serrated edge This is good for fabrics that might ravel when you wash them. If you don't know the different seam finishes that you can do with your sewing machine, then having a nice pair of pinking shears would be helpful. And all you would do is you would go along the seam and just cut a little bit, and that would stop it from raveling to a great degree. This is fleece. It won't ravel. You could wash this 100 times and it's not going to ravel on you. So this is a very good fabric, okay? Now, this is the seat of our pants, and we have a seam here. So what I ask you to do is to lay that seam open, nice and flat, okay? And then we're going to start pinning. So you take your pins, and again, we are pinning with the pin head right off the edge of the fabric. Making sure we have 2 pieces of fabric, we will pin. We want to start from the middle of the seat down to the end of the leg. Don't pin from the bottom up, because that could push your fabric upward and you come with a bubble. If we pin from the seat down, and if there is anything that's uneven at the end, we can easily adjust that by cutting it off. Okay, so you'll do your pinning down one leg, and then you'll go to the other side and work on your other side, making 2 legs. Now that we're going to finish our pinning, we're going to go back to the sewing machine. But one important step here, we want to start to sew one leg, and then we're going to sew the second leg, but we're going to start to the left of the seam. When we start to the left of the seam and sew, then we're going to start on the other side of that seam, and that's going to give us an automatic reinforcement right in the seat where we need it. Okay? Back to your sewing machine. Remember to put your needle down first. We're starting to the left of the seam. Needle down first. We're using a 5/8 inch seam allowance, and we'll start sewing. Remember to pull your pins out before you get to them. And at the end of the seam, you want to back stitch. Needle up, and you want to cut your threads either with the side of your cutter or with your scissors. Okay then, I've only sewn one side. I'm going to let you sew the other side. We're going to proceed. Now, if there's any threads hanging, we want to make sure we trim them, get those out of the way. And now what you see is, I almost have a pair of pants. Now, here's where you might want to do a try-on. Because you've sewn both legs and you've sewn the seat, you can try it on. And what I suggest you do is stand in front of a mirror and try them on for 2 reasons. One, you want to make sure the leg of your pants is the width that you want it. And if it's not, we can talk about alterations at another time, but you would just sew down in a little bit to make them a little bit more streamlined if that's what you like. So once you try them on, you would then fold down what you feel is where you want to wear your pants for a waist, okay? And then I recommend 1.5 inches, as I've done on the toddler size, but you may like a different amount. You may like a lower waist or something. So once you've done that, we're going to ask you just to fold it down, and you might want to take a measure what distance you liked and make sure that measure is the same all the way around. So we're going to pin. You're going to put your hand inside so that you're not pinning your pants together. And we're just going to pin that waist down. Again, my pin head is against the edge of the cut fabric. And we're going to pin. We're almost done. Now, this is ready to be sewn, but I'd like you to take one more step. We're going to put elastic in this waistband. So I'd like you to know 2 things about elastic. Elastic comes in different widths. I recommend 1-inch width elastic for adults, and this is a 1/2-inch elastic, which I've used in this toddler waistband. So whichever one you choose, you can also choose the depth of the elastic. It could be very thick if you're putting it in denim fabric, or it could be a little softer if you're putting it in a thinner fabric. Okay? So whichever one you choose is fine. And you'll also need to put aside a safety pin as well. We're going to use this next. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew down our waistband. Now here's a tip. We're going to learn something about our sewing machine. Your sewing machine has a free arm that pulls right off. Now this is a basic Singer sewing machine that I use in my students' classes, and I recommend a basic machine for everyone. But the one consistent item is that most machines all have a free arm. They may be larger than others, but they all have a free arm. A lot of times they have a neat little pocket where you can store things as well. Okay, so we're going to move that free arm off. And what this is good for is you would be able to slide on the pants leg, or in this case the waistband, so that we can have ease in sewing it. Now we need to leave about a 1-inch opening somewhere. All right, I've chosen to leave that 1-inch opening near the seam. So I'm going to sew a little bit on the side of the seam. That's where I'm going to start. And again, I'm using my sewing foot against the edge of the cut edge of the fabric to keep a straight line. As long as I keep that foot next to this cut edge, I'll have a straight line. And you want to sew all the way around your waistband. Let's start. Okay, that's enough. You have sewn all the way around your waistband, and you come up on the other side of your seam. That's my 1-inch opening. Now here's the fun part. We take our elastic, and what I'll ask you to do is to take your elastic, put it around your waist, and just give it a little bit of pull so that you have some elastic pull on your waistband, and then cut where you feel that's how you want your pants to fit. Once you cut that elastic, then we take the end of it, add a safety pin to it. I think if you've watched your grandmother sew in years past, this is what they did. There's always new ways to do this, but this is one of the quickest, easiest ways. That 1-inch opening, you want to insert it, the safety pin closed, insert it into the seam that you've just sewn, and push and pull, push and pull, until you have that elastic coming around the other side. Now you do want to be careful that the elastic doesn't come back out. So once you get it right at the end, you grab those two pieces. I have completed one for you, and it's already been completed, so I've already tacked the elastic. So what you want to do is just sew across that elastic to keep the two pieces together, and then let it slide into the waistband and even it off. Now the opening is still there, so we have to sit down and sew that little opening, that 1-inch opening, you sew that closed. And then you have your waistband. Now remember, we marked what was the back. You could add a little piece of fabric there so that you remember that's the back. Or, as I did in this case, you could add a button or a ribbon to the front so that you know that's the front, whichever you prefer. Okay, now that we've completed the waistband, you can try these back on again and just fold up the bottom so that you know where you want your hem to be. Once you have done that, and I'm going to assume, to help you, that perhaps when you looked at your hem, the bottom of your pants, it was a little uneven. And if it was, all you want to do is just take your scissors and even it off. Okay? And then if you knew what your hem was, say 1 inch, take your tape measure, And you want to fold it up just an inch. And then you want to place your pins. Remember how we pinned? All the way around, opening your seam, folding it down. All the way around. If this was not fleece and it was maybe cotton, which you could use a cotton fabric also, you could give this a nice press with your iron and that would help it stay in place. So now that we've pinned it all the way around, we will sew all the way around, and I'm going to show you how this works on the free arm of your sewing machine. So you want to slip this right on. Now suppose you wanted to hem a pair of pants. Same thing. Turn them up, secure them with a pin, and then you can slide it right on. Okay, and you want to sew very close to the edge of what you've cut. Needle down, foot down, and we'll sew. All the way around, just pushing your fabric in a circle. All the way around. When you get to the end of your seam, you want to backstitch. Just to tack the threads. And then, like I said, you can either use your scissors to cut very close to the fabric so that you don't have any threads hanging. Remember to put those threads on your sewing machine straight back so that they don't get all caught up. Okay, I think we have a completed pair of pants. So now you can turn this inside out and you have a nice hem and you have a nice waistband. And my completed pair is right here. Thank you for sewing with Cheryl, Cheryl J Designs. I'm available at cheryljdesigns@gmail.com.